Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Wow, the absolute nerve of that woman. I'm glad you kept your cool for the most part. She definitely planned that from the get-go. Hilarious how she was basically booted out of town because people saw her true colors, though. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Entitled woman tries to take my dog from me, has no idea that I'm friendly with local business owners. I had someone once try to take my blue heeler, Sophie, from me when I was in town with her. At the time of the story, I was 19 and my younger brother was 6. I'd take Sophie out with me and pick him up from school, then we'd go to the restaurant next to where my father worked as a pharmacist. When my father was done at work about an hour after we got there, we'd all carpool home together. The little brother would take his food to the little arcade machine they had in the back and blow his allowance on it, and I'd go outside to eat with Sophie while reading on my tablet. It was a nice little mom and pop ice cream parlor / restaurant that's been around since the early 1930s, and it's across the street from a rather well-known local tourist attraction. We knew the owners, and they liked her, often spoiling her with food that was either turned away or just stuff they couldn't sell that day. The owner's wife would often spoil Sophie with free ice cream or a piece of saltwater taffy. The story. The little brother had had a half a day on the day this happened, so we'd gotten there right as the lunch crowd was leaving. I leashed Sophie to an outdoor table at the restaurant while my little brother and I went inside to order as per our usual routine. The owners had no problem with it as we were on good terms at the time and still are. Sophie wasn't aggressive and I was on a first-name basis with most of the staff who adored her. Most of them were either still in high school or just graduated and picking up a first-time job. I go to place our order, including something for Sophie to eat, and halfway through the order, the server points behind me and says in a panicked voice, "Someone's trying to grab Sophie." I dropped what I was doing, turned around, and saw this heavy-set lady trying to corral Sophie around the table with one hand on her leash and the other hand trying to grab her collar. I'd had people ask me if she was for sale before. She was, and still is, a very beautiful dog, even at 16 years old now, but nobody had just tried to take her before this. I rushed toward the door and threw it open so hard it nearly cracked the glass pane. Meanwhile, the cashier was calling the owner out of the back of the kitchen. After I got out the door, I demanded, "The hell are you messing with my dog for?" The lady responded with a sweet voice, "I was going to take her home." Like she wasn't just trying to steal someone's beloved pet. I lost my crap and screamed at her, "You get your hands away from my dog, or there's going to be police involved, and it won't be for you." I was and still am a big guy. I'm 6'1" and about 280 pounds. She jerked her hand away like she'd been stung, but decided to try and start ranting at me about how you obviously don't care for the poor thing if you're leaving it tied out here in the sun. You don't deserve this sweet little thing. The nerve of this lady. She'd been caught red-handed and she was still trying to get my dog. At this point, I'd had it. "Lady," I started in a low growl, trying and failing to keep calm. "I've had anger management issues since I was small, so this wasn't easy. She's in a shady area, and I set a bowl of water down for her, which she hasn't even touched yet. I'd been in the restaurant for about a minute before you decided to try and abduct her, and we eat outside of this establishment all the time." At this point, I was about ready to explode, but kept calm as I could as I grabbed Sophie's leash and unclipped it from the table. She immediately hid behind me, and I tried to back off, but this entitled lady wasn't done yet. "You don't deserve such a beautiful dog. I want her for my kids to play with," she demanded. At this, I sensed an opening to de-escalate the situation. "That's a terrible idea," I started, having an idea on how to get out of this situation. "This breed is notorious for being bad with kids." This is true with the breed, but not with Sophie. She's always loved kids. She's mixed with Australian Shepherd, which are generally great with kids in my experience. But this lady didn't need to know that. "What are you talking about? She's been so friendly every time you're down here." This raised every alarm bell and red flag in my head at the same time. She'd been watching me and Sophie for at least a week or two to know how often I was down here and know our routine. She might have even planned this out in advance. This is a cattle dog. They're bred to work with half-wild cattle and are known as healers for how they bite at heels of people and animals. They're not like Lassie. I started ranting. To be honest, I never knew if she understood that reference, and it doesn't matter anyway. This is my dog. You're not getting her. Now leave us alone before the police get here. The staff have already called them. This was a bluff. I had no idea what the staff was doing, but it made her stop for a minute, and that was long enough for me to get back to the door and open it before asking the owner, who had come out of the back, "Hey, owner," not using his real name without permission, "mind if I wait in here with Sophie for a bit? Someone just tried to take her while she was out front." The owner took one look at me and at Sophie, trying to hide from the lady, and replied, "Head into the back. I'll let you know when it's safe." I took Sophie and headed back into the area next to the arcade machine, where she cuddled up to my little brother, who she's always been attached to. Meanwhile, I heard the owner start telling the lady off. She even tried to claim I stole her dog. The conversation went like this. Her, "He just took my dog." Owner, "Nice try, but he's a regular customer, and he's had that dog for 2 years now. I've known her since she was a puppy." Her, "I'm not leaving until I get that dog." Owner, in the most quiet and soft and collected voice I'd ever heard him use. It honestly made him more intimidating. I'd never seen him get angry before, and it was terrifying. "No, you're leaving right now. We have you on camera trying to take his dog." Her, "This isn't over. I want to speak to the owner." Owner, "Yes, it is. I'm the owner, and you're banned. Both from my store," for some reason he never called it a restaurant, "and all other stores in town." Her, "You can't do that. You have no authority." Owner, "Yes, I can. I'm the head of the local council, and I'm making sure they all see what you did. If you leave now, you should get away before his father gets here. I've already called him, and he's not a nice man when his family's threatened." This was a bluff. He never called my father, but I didn't learn that until years later. Dad was a true Papa Bear when it came to us kids, even threatening the local deputy once when he came into our house when he wasn't home. This was what finally broke her, but she wasn't going to leave before getting in one last blustering half-threat. "Fine, I'll leave, but this isn't the end of this," after which she stormed out. It turned out that was the end of it. The lady got kicked out of all the local-owned stores and had to do all her shopping at a chain store in the next town. She later moved out of the area when people found out what type of person she was and stopped being nice to her. Nowadays, the ice cream shop has been sold to new owners. The old owners retired a few years later and are living a comfortable life in the Washington Peninsula. I still talk with them online every now and then. I gave the wife my reading tablet so she could enjoy her books more often as a retirement present. My father's also retired and spends most of his time around town hanging out and playing with his friends in a blues band. And my brother and I work at a local grocer. Sophie still likes kids and the sweet things in life, but we've had to cut back on how much she gets. She's getting old and having trouble getting around now. Edit. Some more details. This happened in a small community about an hour and a half east of Seattle, Washington. The locals were and still are a rather tight-knit community, and everyone out here knows each other. Most of the longer-lived stores around here used to be passed from parent to child. My family was no different, but Mom decided to pursue her own career when she was younger and sold her part of the family business to her siblings. Dad grew up in a similar community in Idaho, so he's also big on small-town values, helping neighbors when they need it, taking care of others, etc. I was a third-generation local brat, and most of the area knew my family since my uncle still ran one of the larger stores. Sadly, people from the larger urban areas are starting to migrate out this way, so a lot of the smaller businesses are being driven under by large chain stores. For all pet owners out there, I'll say this. Get your animal licensed and chipped if possible. If you can't get them licensed, keep a photo and vet records of them for when you have to prove it's your animal. And never make my mistake and leave your pet unattended in a public place. And our next story. So my new car is spying on me. It all started when I installed the security app from our company. Or actually, it began when I bought this new car from the dealership, but let's take it step by step. I work in finance and often discuss sensitive information over the phone that should only be known by our company staff, like my bosses and coworkers. It's one of the reasons our clients trust us and why we have separate work phones for business calls. These phones' numbers are only given to employees and they change every 6 months. Recently, I sold my old 2008 Lexus RX and bought a new car from the showroom. Won't name the brand here. I often talk to my bosses on the phone while driving to meetings or to sign documents, and just recently our security team mandated that we install this protective app on our phones. The thing is, this app keeps going off whenever I'm on the phone and get into my new car. I talked to our security team about it, and they said that car companies should ensure the confidentiality of our information, but they also mentioned that cars are spying on their users, collecting data on location and driving habits. With cameras and microphones, they gather personal info about the drivers. Who knows what else they could be collecting? Plus, their contracts are written in a way that's hard to legally challenge if something goes wrong. So now I'm thinking of going back to a more classic type of car. Maybe I'll buy something with fewer miles than my old Lexus, but at least I'll feel secure about my information. A car's my property and should give me freedom of movement, not the fear of saying something I shouldn't inside of it. Great news! My new car came with a free feature, an overzealous personal assistant that listens to all my calls. Who needs privacy when you have a car that's more attentive to your conversations than your therapist? And our last story. Jerk with boat parks across 5 handicap spaces, and I call the cops. I used to be a stock car racer. I quit when I was hit and slammed into a wall and fractured a vertebrae. Every Friday, we would race and then stop at a 24-hour restaurant that had lots of parking so we can park the truck and car hauler and still see it. The restaurants also have windows, so it's easy to see your car or truck with trailer no matter where you park. One fine day, we drive to that restaurant for dinner by car. I have a handicap placard, but there's a truck with a boat parked across all 5 handicap spaces. I call the cops. I have a handicap placard, spine surgeries, and it ticks me off when people do this. After we gave our order, a police officer arrives. Cue the drama. The boat owner observes the officer outside and goes out to meet him. We couldn't hear the conversation, but there was a lot of gesticulating by the boat owner. Officer hands him some paper and departs. Boat owner returns to the restaurant, and he is ticked. Like I stormed the Capitol kind of rage. He starts going off at the restaurant employees who assure him that they didn't call. He doesn't accept that and is screaming at a bunch of teenage employees. I stand up and said I called them. He then turned his rage on me. I grew up with a father who had anger issues, so this guy was nothing new. I've learned to lean into these things and called him out for being an entitled jerk who thought giving his boat special treatment was okay. I pointed out the spaces we use to park our race car, perfectly visible, so why be a jerk and take 5 handicap spaces? He called me a bunch of names, and then his 3 boating buddies stepped in and said it was time to leave. Turned out he got 5 tickets, 1 for each spot at $250 each. A very expensive lunch. Maybe next time his gray matter will remind him to be a better person and avoid $1,250 in fines. Made for an interesting meal. I've always believed that people get what they earn. He learned every penny of those fines. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.